I don't know. I feels like that there's been an airing of grievances. Maybe there was a Festivus miracle on the defensive side. Like,
welcome to My Gotta Podcast. I'm Jim Wood. In this episode, John Powell and I review Georgia's 34-11 win over Michigan in the Orange Bowl. As always, remember to check out store.mygottapodcast.com to see our latest merch. And you can follow us on social media at MyGottaPodcast. Finally, if you like what you hear, please subscribe, rate, 5 stars obviously, and review the show. If you leave us a review, you just might hear it on an upcoming episode. Now, let's join the conversation in progress.
I mean, we've been like skirting around, trying to not talk about this matchup for how long now? you had to rein me in constantly, like, hey, we got to play Michigan. It's like, well, in retrospect, did we?
Right. Yeah. Stop looking ahead, John. Stop looking ahead.
And conversely, did Alabama really have to play Cincinnati? Like,
right. Yeah. I mean, it was, I don't know. Like, so I guess, I don't know. That one was, I guess that game was closer technically. Right.
Was it though?
No. Yeah. Neither of them were close. But it's kind of weird because so the way the Orange Bowl went, I think that's basically what I would have assumed would have happened when Georgia were to play Michigan before we lost to Alabama, if that makes sense. So, when Michigan beat Ohio State, we were all celebrating, saying, oh, yeah, like that's the Big Ten team we want in the playoff, right? We'd much rather play Michigan than Ohio State. And then it's like we kind of forgot that when, after the SEC championship game, everything was so doom and gloom, and we kind of started questioning ourselves. And I mean, I think the main thing, and like, I don't know, we said it, I heard it on like every podcast that I listened to last week, was basically, all right, like, who is Georgia? Is Georgia the team that you saw for 12 games in the regular season? Or are you going to argue that Georgia is the team you saw in one game, in the SEC championship game? And, against Michigan, we saw the team that showed up 12 times, not once, right? And so now, we've seen Georgia play like that. I mean, especially defensively, right?
Right.
I mean, it was back to, okay, this is Georgia football. I mean, everything, although, both sides of the ball. I mean, it was a complete domination. And I think, like, I didn't even realize, like, I knew it was a domination, but it wasn't until I rewatched it on New Year's Day, I was like, oh my gosh, like this game was over, like in the first quarter.
Right. It felt like it should have been over. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, after the Kenny McIntosh trick play touchdown, I mean, the game was pretty much over at that point. I mean, they were done, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, we went up 14-0, and it was like, I don't know, are they even going to be able to score?
Right. It was nuts. I mean, we jumped on them, and we did. I'll say, like you were kind of like trying to pump, I think, yourself and us up when we were recording the preview, and you were like, I just want to like dismantle them. I want to make them quit. I want to break them, and all this kind of stuff. And man, we did. So your wish was granted.
My wish was granted. My score was not, which I'm totally fine with. But yeah, I don't think anybody expected to. Well, I guess I shouldn't say anybody, but like not many people expected to walk away with that type of dominating performance. I know Graham and John both had scoreless that were pretty close to the final score there.
Yeah,
but we were predicting similar results versus Alabama too. So you never know with these games. So you gotta actually tee it up and play them. So I don't know, man. It felt like a totally different team. I'm convinced at this point that there was something happened with the SEC championship, whether it's you want to give into the conspiracy theory that we sandbagged the game through it because we knew that Alabama was going to be in no matter what.
Yeah.
Or I've increasingly heard that more guys were sick than were being talked about or led on to believe.
Yep.
Everybody played out of their mind. I mean, some of that's going to be like, Chris Smith wasn't 100% during in the SEC
Yep.
championship game. I mean, there were players that were available that, Brainy seemed like he was playing a little bit more, but like,
Yeah, he came back. Yeah.
which he didn't play at all previously. So it's like,
Yeah.
guys got healthier, guys got rest. I mean, it had been how long? Like almost like what 3 weeks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. About 3 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
We saw like so many guys, it was a sad day for like the Michigan bros that had been like, talking smack on Twitter all week. And, like I know I saw a bunch of guys like posting the video clip of when like there was a play where like Jordan Davis was gassed in the SEC championship game, and he kind of was hands on his hips and not putting forth the full effort or whatever. I saw that clip floating around a lot, right? And like they learned what Jordan Davis does in this game. I mean, he was back to running guys down, the insane quickness for his size. It was fun to watch, and like everyone was doing it. Everyone was flying around. The play where there was like a swing pass out to the right, and there was like Michigan sent a guy in motion, and Nakobe Dean was tracking him in motion, and then ran him down and tackled him behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, that was like straight out. Like that was straight up. It was like I was watching Roquan Smith again. I mean, he was to that level. The defensive performance was ridiculous. I mean, every category that we talked about, like even like Coach Trillbill's over unders, like everything went in Georgia's favor. I think, like we went over his yards rushing, the passing, except for the rushing TDs, which I know we talked about that earlier before we were recording. That is kind of weird that we didn't have any, but
Nobody
4 sacks. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We had 4 sacks in the game. They had 0 sacks. They turned the ball over 3 times. It was just an absolute domination. And I know you like to look at the ESPN win probability, and that's a fun graph to look at for this game.
It is a very fun graph to look at. It's something. It's a bit of a sport here at My Guide Podcast, where we look at the game tracker to see what it looked like. At what point did it become completely out of hand for the other team? I mean, you could debate on at what point that actually was for Michigan. I mean, frankly, like it goes to 80%, from 75 to 80%, when. Yeah, it was in the first quarter, like you said.
Yeah, exactly.
It was in the first quarter where they didn't get a first down, and then it just went right back over to Georgia.
Yeah, it's in the 90s
on fourth down.
It's in the 90s. That fourth down. Okay. It's in the 90s in the second quarter. I mean,
yeah.
It's at I've got it at 98.9% with a minute 5 to go in the second quarter.
Exactly. Like less than a minute in the second quarter, right at halftime, which is kind of around that time period that I feel like a lot of Dog fans and Kirby Smart himself, which I haven't seen. You and I were talking about this before we were recording, but like what the heck happened at the end of the first half? It was shades of Mark Richt style clock management. It looked like Kirby was really upset with Stetson for either not moving through, or maybe he had a play call lined up that Stetson was supposed to call that he didn't call. And I don't know, it just seemed like there was a lot of wasted effort and time that would have been good practice for, what we're about to go up against, where we might need, it may come down to, we saw it in the last game, it may come down to getting a score in before halftime or a field goal, which is what happened to us in the Rose Bowl. In 17, we were able to get a field goal right before halftime. That definitely didn't make me feel warm and fuzzy inside. Obviously, for this game, it was inconsequential, but in the big picture, like I'm hoping that we don't need to rush something like that and unsuccessfully. So something to work on there. It's just one of those things. Like, hey, we need to button that up. We need to know exactly what's going on as we're going into halftime, especially against these jokers we're about to go up against.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I guess like my thing on it too is it's like, I mean, it gave us a great GIF, so we did get a good Kirby raid stroke GIF out of it. But like, it was kind of weird to me because when he was all over Stetson, because before that, like while he was getting mad before the half was over, it seemed like he was yelling into his headset, which I'm assuming is Munkin on the other end, and then also B yelling towards the field towards Stetson. So, but I don't know, like like in general, I find his rage strokes funny, and like it's I feel like hopefully it's good coaching and helping them, but I don't know. I kind of felt for Stetson on that one. Like the play calling they kept calling running plays. Clearly, Stetson wasn't feeling a sense of urgency for whatever reason. Kirby could have easily called a timeout with 45 seconds. Like, I think it was when we got the first down. I can't remember exactly where it was, but there was a moment where Kirby walked over to the ref and there were 45 seconds left and he should have called timeout. Like if you're that upset, you got a timeout, call timeout and then go talk to everybody and yell at them then and maybe actually be able to still get some points. So I don't know. I generally enjoy the raid strokes, but that one was kind of weird. I felt like it was a little unfair to Stetson, but whatever.
There was a lot of little weird quirks in this game. It almost feels a little bit like, and I wonder if, in the 30 for 30 recap of this season, when it's all said and done, like how much prep did they do on Michigan and how much prep did they do on Alabama in these last 3 weeks? I don't know, because it seems like that the team itself is like this unfinished business mentality.
Yeah.
If you were to go back and like look at some of the pregame pomp and circumstance with the situation, I kind of felt like Michigan lost this game when they got off the bus. Basically, there was not a whole lot of energy that I felt coming from this team at all. Starting with the way that they were, I hate to say it and sound so petty, but like they didn't look like they were there for they weren't there for a work trip. It looked like they were there for fun. They were all dressed up in matching sweatpants and sweatsuits and stuff, which I know that like, there's a lot of teams that do stuff like that. But you look at our boys and we're like coming in there suit and ties and stuff like that. Kirby's going to these photo shoots looking like he's going to a business meeting as the CEO, and Harbaugh is dressed like he's going to go tour the mall.
Right.
I mean, I don't know, dude. It just looked like that we were much more focused and much more, I don't know, we were much more ready for the moment. We've been there before. We knew what to expect. We knew how to deal with it. You saw that in some of the posts and stuff like that. Like I know that John Tweets was keeping us updated on all the goings on of TikTok and Instagram live shenanigans that the Michigan players were posting with their, there's some of their starters that were being requested to go and hydrate before they went to bed, being forced to go to bed. I don't know, man. Right. I'm sure that some of that was going on with our boys too, but like, I don't know. It just felt like that they were not ready for the moment. And then the quintessential moment for me was when ESPN and some of the pregame videos and B-roll footage that they do, they showed a video of the offensive line for Michigan walking into the stadium, and I don't know. It just oozed fake juice to me. The whole thing just oozed. It just oozed fake juice. They were wearing run the damn ball shirts. Yeah. With their pit Vipers on, trying to look like that they were down south Georgia boys. I don't know, man. They looked like they were faking it, and they looked really fluffy too. Which just it kind of reminded me of the pregame a while back when Georgia Tech, like they posted these like sideline photos of them doing workouts and stuff like that, and our guys were like, "Do y'all work out? Like, do they lift weight? Y'all lift weights?"
Right.
Which I know is weird to say because that's the Joe Moore Award winner. Like that was the thing, and I was not impressed. I was not impressed with the off the bus look of that team.
Yeah, I didn't know, kind of what to think, right? Because, obviously we don't sit and like watch Michigan, and like what I saw of them did look, pretty good, but we had seen some things that we felt like we could, exploit, and weren't really sure. I don't know on a few things, but like in general, I think one of the things you had actually said, like, can we please win the coin toss, right? And we didn't, and they deferred. But like when Zamir White ran the ball up the gut for 9 yards on the very first play of the game, I was like, oh, it's on. Like like that really set the tone, and that was the turned out to be the answer to Hug Dog's question of, if you see this in the first quarter. For me, it was if you see Zamir White run up the gut for 9 yards in the first play of the game, I felt really good. So like right away, that first drive was a thing of beauty. I mean, it was perfect. It was absolute perfection. It could have ended earlier. I was watching it again today. I think you might be right. I think there's a chance Cook could have scored on that long run play if he didn't cut it back. I
Yes.
think you're right.
Did you watch the all 22? Did you watch the all
I didn't
22?
watch that, but like, because if he just stays
Okay.
going left, I think he probably scores.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. 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 Yes.
So the safety had an angle, or I think the safety thought he had an angle, and I guess James saw that as well. But I don't think he was fast enough to get there. But anyway,
Yeah. No, I think he could have beaten him to the sideline.
yeah. But so that drive, and then like on Michigan's first drive, like I felt a sense of desperation on the very first drive. Right. I mean, we talked about watch for the flea flicker, right? As we said, we saw one in every single game. They ran it on the first drive. And then we saw them go for it on fourth down on the first drive. Which, that play actually was there, but there was a lot of pressure in McNamara's face, to kind of cause him, I would say, to miss that throw to the tight end. But then from there,
you did see the plays were there.
Yeah, you were right. Yeah, there were some
plays. There were some plays there.
There were some plays there, but I would say
a lot of hell for that.
I know. This is insight into the text. I was trying to calm you down. But I guess my thing there, what I would say, this is one of the things I was looking for, because I remember that play. And I'm not sure whether it was Wyatt or if it was Davis, but someone like pushed the center back into McNamara. So, that's the kind of thing, like you've got these guys in your face and that can affect the throw. So, but it was just, from there it was on, right? I mean, they go for it, fourth down, don't get it. We march down and score again. That was the trick play, the McIntosh pass, which I don't know. I'm assuming you saw, I think we talked about this, but James Cook's comment that like, McIntosh not once threw a good pass in practice when they practiced that play.
I imagine that's one of those things. I imagine that's one of those things where Kirby was like, "Oh, I wish I hadn't said that."
right. Yeah, I think he said he was like shocked.
They were surprised to get the call.
Yeah. That was funny.
Well, I think we maybe like got a little ahead of ourselves. So like let's take a step back. So when my mentality going into this game was like, how did we get here? And that's actually part of what I'm drinking right now, Jim. As I have a little bit left over of. We haven't talked about the bourbons that we're drinking today. You might have heard my cork pop, but I'm actually drinking Dovetail, Barrel Dovetail.
Okay.
Which is pretty good bourbon. It's actually the bourbon that I purchased at Clemson for the Clemson game. And coincidentally, that's also what I was drinking. And coincidentally, I went back to the well on what I was wearing, partly because I looked in the wardrobe and was like, it is 80 degrees outside. I need shorts and I need something light and airy. So I just put on what I wore to begin the season with. And so I feel like going back to. Let's get back to the basics. Let's not try anything new or fancy, and just stick with what works. And so I feel like our Bulldogs kind of took that to heart.
Yeah, for sure. And that was one of the things I think we said, right? Like that's what we wanted to see them do, and I would say they certainly did that.
Exactly.
And like the things, it just, I don't know, like plays ended the way we had seen them end before. So like, for
Mm-hmm.
example, when we gave up what, one big pass play in the first half, right? Like kind of down the right sideline, there was a big pass play over Darion Kendrick, but he ran the guy down and he made the tackle, which kind of to me reminded me back of like, like South Carolina. Like remember South Carolina, although they did eventually get a long touchdown pass, which uh, whatever. But like the first one was the same kind of deal, right? Like get a huge long pass play, but you make the tackle, and then in this case, we were able to hold them to 3 points, right? I mean that's the kind of thing that's so different as opposed to what we saw in the one game, right, in the SEC championship game where the big pass plays went for touchdowns. Yeah, we just that stuff wasn't there, and I mean they don't have the athletes. Like it's the kind of thing
Mm-hmm.
where this game went like in hindsight, maybe we should have seen this coming, but we were also like broken,
Yeah, for
from the
sure.
last game you had seen, and I think this is kind of the proof of like you're never as bad as you think you are after a loss, kind of deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the tendency for this team, this Michigan team, to want to run, which is kind of where I was, kind of hung up on, was like, can we get them into a position where they are forced to throw the ball? You mentioned like
Yeah.
in our preview, these two teams are almost identical, and they pretty much were,
Mhm.
with the exception of the turnovers. Um,
Yeah.
they obviously were chasing. I mean, when you get down 14-0 in the first quarter, like you're chasing the game. So the running game kind of went away a little bit based on just what they were up against, but also like we put them in that position because they couldn't run the ball at all, but they also didn't
Yeah.
necessarily want to because they couldn't afford to.
Right.
Um, so they turned the ball over. I mean, we created turnovers. Like I was actually, that's actually something that we did highlight in the preview, was that Michigan had seemed like that they had been living and dying on turnovers, because these games that they've been playing have been fairly
Hmm.
close. Like I don't
Yeah.
know that they've necessarily like blown the doors off of people, but like I think I mentioned that to you
You did.
in some of those
You did.
games, like that I felt like that they were the benefactors of some opportune turnovers. Um, Iowa was in the game until they started turning the ball over. Ohio State, they turned the ball over, and those were, whatever.
Yeah.
But they lost the turnover battle by a substantial margin. I think that we probably dropped them down to, what was it? They were +5, and they had
Yeah.
three
So they'd only
turnovers.
be
So
what?
like
Yeah.
so we impacted their turnover margin pretty substantially.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think that it ultimately came down to how our defense played. And I think that if we were
Hmm.
being honest, as you look ahead, like we need that defense to show up. We need that offensive line to show up. Um,
Yeah.
the pass grade, I think this game was the highest graded game for Sawyer and McClendon
Hmm.
in terms of like the PFF grades or whatever, which, if that means anything to you. Um, our offensive line had the best performance that it's had in quite some time. So some of that's definitely talent related. I think Michigan was like number 15 on like the blue chip ratio or whatever, like the talent ratio, in the country, which
Mm.
is obviously a step off of Georgia and Alabama. So, but again, I think that aside from an inopportune coin toss loss and turnovers, like
Yeah.
I think that we can fix some of those problems that we had against Alabama, and I'm hoping that we can get to, kind of what everybody saw in the game film. That this is probably what we should have expected in this game, is that shutting down their offense, creating turnovers, and creating push, and we did that in spades. And then the
Yeah.
other thing is the third downs. Our third down efficiency was phenomenal for the setup to what ultimately became the route. So in the first, I think that when we were in third down situations in the first half or something like that, I know Josh Dog Stats posted some of this information. Was like, okay, so I found what I was talking about. It wasn't Dog Stats, although he did retweet it, and they're kind of a team. But Graham and his 12 takeaways on the Orange Bowl, which was his number one takeaway for this game was it was all about first down. So the first down plays in the first half. So I thought it was third down, but it was first down. They had a 100% success rate on the first seven first downs of the game. So
Got it.
that is absolutely like punch you in the mouth. Like you're not gonna have a whole lot of success on the day if that's the case.
Right.
For 7 first downs in a row, you have 100% success rate. That's literally the definition of getting run over.
Yeah. 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 That was the whole, I wanted to see us like stay on schedule, right? And like, boy, did we ever! I mean, it was a clinic, man. Monken, he ran a clinic in the first half.
It was definitely, yeah.
And I say in the first half. I mean, the second half, it was just kind of like whatever. Like the game was over. So that is where the only to me the glaring thing was the Stetson when he like threw the ball up on the first drive of the second half. But that was his kind of one play. And I mean, frankly, he does that every game. There's one play like that every game where you kind of scratch your head. So honestly, it was kind of par for the course. But no one was around it. It didn't hurt us. Would like to just see him not let that ball go, in the next game. Which there was a similar scenario that came up later in the game where he was kind of rolling the same direction and he threw it in the stands. Like that's what I want him to do there. And he did later in the game. So who knows? Anyway.
Yeah. No, it was definitely. Yeah.
You mentioned when you mentioned Salyer earlier, like the guy had an amazing game, the whole line did. I mean, I don't think either of us would have believed that Michigan would get 0 sacks, not with those two guys, both of them. I mean, we kind of felt like they were going to get theirs or whatever, right?
I mean, so I thought that I think on the preview I mentioned that they would at least each of them would probably have like one sack. That's kind of what I was expecting. I was expecting them to get to Stetson at least 1 or 2 times between the two of them, and they didn't. I mean, some of the videos that came out afterwards was just like, man, our boys took their soul away on multiple occasions.
Yeah.
But you did see some of the talent there. I mean, you saw Hutchinson kind of absolutely school Darnell Washington on the play, which ended up not really being super impactful. But like, I mean, there were fits and starts, I guess, a little bit. I mean, obviously, Hutchinson had a fantastic play. At the beginning of the game when we flared out Brock Bowers into a bunch set, and like I think I texted this to you guys. It's like, man, if we ever see Hutchinson that far away from the ball, like he clearly is going in coverage, and we need to take advantage of that. But we ended up throwing a little screen, and Hutchinson was able to blow it up like immediately, which, a good player like that, I mean, it's not saying he's a bad player. He just had a bad game. They got outmanned. We have more talent to throw at them throughout the game. I'm sure they were gassed. I told you guys in probably, I want to say it was like the first quarter or the second quarter, it looked very similar and very eerily similar to what happened to Georgia when we played Alabama. Was like they looked gassed, dude. 97 had his hands on his hips. He was huffing and puffing, like looked like he was just getting absolutely to put it in a TikTok video that came out, hornswoggled. He was getting hornswoggled. But
I agree though with your point of like that, like I think like I don't like to say like, oh, like they were overrated and these kinds of things. Like I think Michigan is good, and to your point, I think Hutchinson is good. I think we just had a plan for him and dominated him. It was impressive.
Yeah. But the other thing, talking about impressive, was Stetson. I mean, frankly, like, I mean, if you look at his numbers for the Bama game and the Michigan game, though, very similar, right? Like He threw for over 300 yards. He had multiple touchdowns. The big change there is, can he not turn the ball over? And we talked about that on the preview. It was like, we just need Stetson to not turn the ball over. And we've mentioned it multiple times throughout the year. He is good for one or two bonehead plays. And it just so happened that this bonehead play that, he threw that ball up for grabs where he probably should have thrown it out of bounds or taken a sack or, you cannot do that against Alabama. And I hope that they drill that into him over and over again. Like, we just cannot have those kind of 50-50 balls under pressure, under duress, like not so much under pressure, but under duress. Like he was running for his life. Like, either take the sack or throw the ball out of bounds, like, period. Or take it off and run, which I think he did. He clearly was coached to tuck the ball and run, or some of these plays were designed, whether or not, I don't know. There's a couple of plays that he ran. I wasn't really 100% if it was a designed run or not, but he clearly was flush from the pocket a few times and created something out of nothing. There was a couple of times where I wish he would have slid, but, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he's good for a couple of bonehead plays a game, and it just so happens that a couple of those bonehead plays against Alabama resulted in major hindrance to our victory.
Yeah. No, for sure. I agree. To your point, I don't feel like he had a designed run, because I know we've been doing a lot of the zone read and like where he'll keep it. I don't think he ever kept it on the zone read that I can remember. The big run was definitely where he kind of broke contain, scrambling. So
yeah, there was one play where, I mean, maybe it wasn't designed, but like he definitely tucked it really quickly and took off.
Yeah. But he did. I think you're right. Like, he did kind of what we were hoping he would do.
Yeah,
like in general, right?
He did what he should have done against Alabama, and maybe some of that's going to be to, I don't know. I feel like that, like we've had in years past with the previous regimes, the Richt era and prior coaches, was, those guys, they got in our head, and Michigan, unfortunately for them, didn't have the luxury of being in our head.
Right. Yeah.
Never were in our head, never, because we've only played them 2 or 3 times before. So I don't know. I think that we're playing with a team that has something to lose, and we are playing like this is the season. So there's no more excuses. You just got to line it up and let's play some football. You know what I mean? And they definitely did that in spades against Michigan.
Yeah, and it was also, I think it was pretty special to see James Cook have the kind of game that he did, being a South Florida, Miami area kid. That was pretty cool. Had multiple long catches. Like I know I did what pretty much everyone did when you see James Cook. Now, when you see him go in motion and see the linebacker go with him, you announce to everyone that you're with, like, we're throwing to Cook on this play. And when we did, and it worked again. I also wanted to say, too, like, kind of back on the Stetson thing, but it was something that I noticed definitely on the touchdown pass to Cook. So Stetson didn't get sacked, but he did get rocked a couple of times. He actually gets clobbered on the touchdown pass to James Cook. If you go back and watch that, he gets nailed right as he's throwing it. And there was another time that happened. I think that happened like on the first drive. I can't remember who he was throwing to. I think it was the deep ball to Brock Bowers. It wasn't exactly in the right spot, but Brock made a great catch. But that play as well, Stetson was getting hit as he was throwing. So I mean, he did a great job of standing in there in the pocket, standing his ground, and making those throws. It was a heck of a game, and obviously Brock Bowers was doing Brock Bowers things, like he always does. The kid continues to be impressive. Did you see? Apparently, he got hurt. I didn't even recognize this at all during the game, but I saw stuff today about like that Brock Bowers was fine, and I didn't even realize that he went out of the game injured.
Did he?
Apparently, his shoulder.
I didn't even pick up on.
I didn't at all. Yeah, I didn't at all until today. Somebody asked Kirby if he was okay, and he said he's fine. I guess at some point he came out and they didn't put him back in, but I didn't notice it just because like we were up by so much. I guess
Oh,
I don't know.
geez.
I don't remember that coming up on the
Yeah.
podcast, but they said he's fine.
How about we talked about this, with the defense needing to show up and things like that with the Alabama game and whatever. Like, so we had all these issues from the Alabama game, and I feel like that we got so many answers from the coaches. And
Mhm.
Jim, did it seem like our defense was a little bit more focused in this game?
Yeah,
I mean, do
yeah.
you think that might have something to do with our defensive coordinator like being a little distracted in the last,
Mm,
for the last game? So
yeah.
I don't know. I feels like that there's been an airing of grievances. Maybe there was a Festivus miracle on the defensive side. Like basically Kirby Smart got together with everybody. Was like, all right, listen, I know you're a head coach at Oregon, but we need you here. Do you want to be here? And he's like, I want to be here. All right, then let's get it done. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
right. Right.
I got a lot of
Right.
problems, and your people are going to hear about it. So, so from the defensive side, obviously we shored up a lot of that. I mean, frankly, I was wondering if they're even going to score a touchdown, and I'm sure if you're probably like me, like you were watching it, and like I was texting, much like apparently I do during bowl games, is I text message my friends that are like, obscure teams fans. Like,
Right.
I was text messaging with my Michigan buddy last year. It was the Cincinnati buddy, and this year I was texting him too. I was like, "How you feeling, bud? Welfare check."
Right. Right. Right.
But I was messaging him all game long, and it was just like, oh man, it was not fun for him because
I
he was one of
actually,
those Michigan guys that was talking a big game.
right. I actually wanted to. I'm glad you brought him up because I wanted to ask you a question because something that you told me because I meant to go back and look for this and I forgot to. I'm curious if you did. You told me that he was basically saying like, man, Georgia holds on every play, kind of like what we say about like Auburn or Alabama or whatever.
Right.
And I don't know. I feel like me personally, like I mean, obviously like everyone holds, right? But for some reason, you always notice when the other team does it. Like I never notice it when we do it. And I will not say never. There are definitely times where I see it and I'm like, ooh, got away with that one. But I
Yeah.
didn't notice it so much in this game. But I'm never looking for it. I am wondering. I was curious if you saw anything. I didn't, but I forgot to
I mean,
look
I
too.
saw a couple here and there, but nothing that's going to change the course of the game. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I was texting him. One thing that I did notice on both sides of the ball, like on offense and for defense, I did feel like that the referees were really loose on false start. Like they would show these replays.
Yeah.
They would show these replays, and it was like, oh wow, like that guy is definitely going early. Like they could have easily called a false start there.
I feel like Jamari Salyer had a false start every other play. Like, like either
Mm.
Salyer was having false start, or he's that much faster, or everyone else was being slow to react to the snap or something. Because it felt like Salyer was a half step back before anyone
Right.
else. Ever,
The
like
fix,
a
the
lot
fix
of
was
the time.
in. The
A
fix
lot
was
of
in,
the
Jim.
time.
The
Yeah,
fix is
yeah,
in, Jim.
yeah.
They just want the SEC to win everything. Um,
Right.
but going back to what I was saying, like if you're like me, like, and you're watching that touchdown on that busted coverage play, you're like,
Yeah.
like it kind of reminded me of earlier in the season when the time I can't even remember the game where it was like we were shutting them out and it was like, oh dang it, they scored.
Yeah, that was Kentucky. That was a Kentucky end. That was
Kentucky.
when
It was
we were so mad at the end of that game.
yes, yes. That's what it was. That's what it
Yeah,
was. Because
yeah,
everybody was mad. They're like, dang it, I just
yeah.
wanted to shut them out.
Right,
Like, dang it, I didn't want them to score a touchdown at all.
right. At least this one was with like all the backups were in on that drive at that point. Yeah, total blown coverage.
Yeah. All right, so we talked about the end of the first half. Let's talk about the end of the game because there were some things at the end of the game that I was a little curious about. Like number one, why were the starters in for so long?
Mm,
Number two was why were we throwing the ball when all we needed to do was chew clock? And I felt like that I don't know. I felt like we beleaguered this win towards the end more than we needed to. And I just hope that I hope that those kinds of things, like the beginning of the end of the first half and the way we ended the game are just not indications of,
So
our inability to close things out. Does that
here's
make
what I'll
sense?
say. Yeah, it does. But my take is this. I think it's a legitimate. It's I would say it's a more legitimate gripe of the first half than the second. At the end of the second half, I mean, the game was over. Kirby was more concerned about calling a timeout to make sure that no one dumped Gatorade on him because he didn't want to be celebrating this win. We're going to celebrate next week. Like, I don't know if you noticed that. That's why we called timeout. I'm pretty sure. Because he wanted to get on the
Nice.
field and get away from those guys and be like, we are not celebrating this. There's more to be done.
Right.
There were, I know we were texting, right? Because with the offensive line, there definitely were some starters that were still in, but upon rewatch, there were some changes. It wasn't everybody. There had been some moving around, and there was a lot of running. Right, I think because at that point there was a lot of Kendall Milton and Dejon Edwards. So I don't know. At that point, to me, like the game was over. I would rather like focus on getting out of there healthy, honestly, than I had actually been kind of frustrated some during the season where we kept trying so hard, like Tennessee game, for example, right? We were trying so hard to make sure that Tennessee didn't score again that I felt like we were putting starters at risk of injury. Like I'd much rather, or yeah, I'll give you a busted coverage with our second and third team secondary. I'd rather that happen than, you know, Ringo get injured or whatever. So the end of the
Yeah, for
game,
sure.
the end of the game doesn't bother me. I think the end of the first half was definitely weird, but for the rest of it, I think we had pretty much already turned our focus to Alabama. I
I
did.
don't know, man. It's the last live football we're gonna have before
Mm,
we play these guys, and I don't know,
yeah,
but
but it wasn't. But again, it was not the starters at that point, though. Like they weren't. I mean, Stetson was still out there, sure, but you
yeah.
had.
Thank you.
But Stetson was handing the ball off at the end. I mean,
So,
he's turning
and
around and giving it
he
to
was
Milton.
he was, but we were also throwing it too because I remember texting you guys, and you guys were like, "What?" Like it was. Yeah, I don't know. I was making that comment that like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And you're
Yeah,
like, everybody was like, just enjoy the win. You're like,
yeah, man,
It's like,
we
there's
just
little
blew.
things.
We just had a blowout playoff victory win. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
Focus on the big
Well,
picture. But yeah, I mean, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
there's definitely things that we can improve on from this game for sure. Like
Oh yeah, there always are.
Kirby goes back and looks at this film. I'm sure that he's going to be getting those boys right for Alabama. Let's talk about one thing that we haven't talked about that I was actually like as the game wore on, and I was actually texting with my Michigan buddy about this was I, in games like this, the two quarterback system does not work.
Yeah,
I felt that they had much more success with McCarthy than they had with McNamara.
yeah,
Um, and my buddy also agreed. He's like, yeah, dude, McCarthy's like, he's the heir apparent. He's got the more lively arm. He's a more talented quarterback. It's very similar to some of the comparisons that have been made on JT Daniels and Stetson all year long. But we have rode the Stetson train as
mm,
opposed to going the route that Michigan's had, where it's like, I mean, I think it was in the first quarter. Like we had, there was a series, maybe there was two series, one or two series with McNamara, and then McCarthy came out. It was like, oh yeah, this is a change of pace or whatever. And it's like,
yeah,
I felt like that it never gave either one of their quarterbacks an opportunity to get comfortable in the game in the biggest stage of their life.
yeah. I would agree. I mean, like in their defense, I guess I would say they're probably kind of in the mold of stick to what got you here kind of deal because they've
Mm-hmm.
been doing that all year and it has worked.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it definitely didn't work here. I agree. I felt like McCarthy looked better, and I mean ultimately like he finished the game. Um, you know, I don't know. I didn't ever hear anything whether that was just
So
a resting thing or McNamara was shook up. I think it was after his last fumble. He never came back in, is the way I remember it.
yeah, I mean, so from where I sit, we talked about this that I don't think that Stetson was going to have as long of a leash
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
in the Michigan game. I also think that is also going to apply for the Alabama game. Like the stakes are higher. The stakes are so much higher.
Yeah.
So if you see that your what got you here plan is not going to plan, then you got to throw you got to throw your entire game plan out in the
Mhm.
first 5 minutes of the first quarter. I mean, so be it. I mean,
Yeah.
the offensive coordinator, like when he's from Alabama, right? Like I think we talked
Mhm.
about that, right? Like he's
Yep.
from Alabama, right? I didn't make that up.
No, you did not.
Um,
That is accurate.
I mean, so he knows how to game plan, and he knows like the contingencies, obviously, because that's what Alabama does. Like they just,
Right.
oh
Right.
shoot, Plan A's not working. Here's Plan B, and you have no answer for it. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Yeah.
that's kind of what the Alabama coaching like tree is known for, right? Like,
Yeah. Well,
um,
I think they just had no answer for Georgia. Period.
I mean,
That's
obviously,
kind of their problem, right?
for sure, clearly that was the problem. But like, they also didn't do anything to help themselves. Is my point, Jim? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
like, hey, this isn't working. Like, let's try something different. And they didn't try something different until the game was over.
Yeah. 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 Well, and I'm fine with that.
Sucks to be you
What?
guys.
How did you feel about the? What was your feelings on the? I mentioned it, the Kirby like not letting the Gatorade bath.
I like the mentality. I
Yeah.
haven't, like I said, part of me in the 30 for 30 wants to know like what was going on behind the scenes.
Mm.
Did they dedicate any time for Alabama? Like, did they see this coming? Clearly, they did because they saw things on the film. Like, I mean, I felt like our defensive linebackers. Like, I mean, Nakobe Dean played lights out. Like, there was that one play where he literally ran from one sideline to the other to tackle a guy,
Yeah.
and I don't know that there's a single linebacker in the country that can make that play. I don't think
Yeah.
that.
It
I
was.
think that he made millions of dollars on that film alone.
Oh yeah. 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 For sure.
I was just going to say, like, so we talked about the defense. We talked about the defense stepping up to the way that we were hoping they would. But like
Mm.
at the same time, there were players on the offensive side that hadn't, like, AD Mitchell, like, have a game,
Mm.
son.
That's
Like,
true. That's a good
I
point.
mean, he's caught a lot of hell for, like, drops, and where's
Mm.
he been? Like, what's going on? Like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like that he was a bit of a question mark all
Mm.
season long, like on the wide receiver front. But he was an absolute unit out there. He was a weapon. He made good routes. Like, I thought that AD had probably the best game of the entire season for him. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that for sure. Yeah, man. I mean, they were again. I think the play calling definitely was a clinic, but the players still have to execute. So you got to give them credit for that as well. And we spread the ball around like we've been doing, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about, like, if you look at the rushing statistics. I mean, so we had 190 yards rushing, but no one guy had a ton of rushing yards individually. But then also there's a lot of lateral stuff that's essentially running plays, right? It worked
Mm-hmm.
really well. And that I was
Really well.
very pleased to see that
I'm
implemented.
hoping that I'm hoping that that's also something that we can leverage for the future for the next game. Some of it felt like
Yeah.
maybe some of it was practice for the next game, and that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of why I was saying, like, it felt like that. I don't know. I don't want to say that they were overlooking at Michigan, but like I'm wondering how much of this was for Alabama as well, because you know if
Mm, uh,
if you were to look at it, like, we weren't really able to move the ball on the ground, and the question was, can Stetson win the game with 30 passes? Do you
mm,
think that if you were to go back and look at this game and say, do you think that Stetson needed to throw 30 passes?
no, he didn't need
He
to.
didn't need to throw 30 passes in this game,
Yeah.
but he did. And I
Yeah.
feel like that was a message
Mm,
that they were sending to not only the team itself, like, hey guys, like, this is what all these, assholes with computers and Twitter and keyboard warriors or whatever, like, this is what everybody says. Like, you can't throw 30 times and win this game. You can't
mm,
have Stetson throw 30 times and win a big game. Like, well, literally he answered every single question that could possibly have been asked of him. He ran, he threw, he read, he gained, he balled out, and I think that there's a little bit of they gave Alabama a lot to think about. I feel like it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting in the next game because I think that our team is peaking at the right moment. I think that the loss kind of shook everybody up nicely. Like it was like that wasn't a huge deal for us, but we're still everything. We still have everything to play for, and I have a feeling that they're going to take advantage.
Nice, dude. I think we need to end on that. That was awesome. So I actually do kind of want to leave it at that. So one quick logistical thing. I think our preview episode is going to come out a little bit later in the week, I think, than it usually does, but we'll still be, similar number of days prior to the game as usual. So with the game being on Monday, we'll have the episode. I think we should have it up by Friday is kind of the idea. So we'll get word out when we're going to record and solicit for questions and all that fun stuff. So, but I think that's the plan. And we have, preseason. When we previewed the season, I don't know if you remember, you said, if Georgia doesn't win the SEC championship and go to the playoff, the season's gone off the rails. And so, what you didn't take into consideration was the fact that we could not win the SEC championship and still go to the playoff and still make it to the championship.
That's true. That's true.
Too good. Cool.
It is what it is. Like I said, in the last episode, we were talking about it. Like you can't truly overtake Alabama until you backdoor a national championship.
That's right. We're trying to Alabama. That's how you gotta do
it. And we're trying to crash a party, and we'll get to that in the next episode.
Awesome. Cool. All right, man. We're looking forward to it. We'll talk again soon to preview the big one.
Absolutely, man. This was fun. It was a fun game. Good win. Great GIF content. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.